Do you know on average how many females most med spas see for every single male patient? You heard this, so you should remember it.
I've probably heard it.
You did not pay attention to my presentation.
It really did set up an environment that wasn't very comfortable for a guy.
That's what a lot of places are struggling with.
The impacts of PTSD on sexual performance. We talk about men, but it's males and females.
My heart's like racing when he says it.
Vagia cadabra. That's pretty good.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Beauty and the Brain, the podcast where we discuss all things aesthetic. I'm your co-host, Dr. Chris Croley.
And I'm Jerry Drinkard, family nurse practitioner, and together Chris and I own Skin and Tonic Med Spa located in Pace, Florida.
Yeah, we always have a lot of fun doing these podcasts, but today in particular, we have a subject that really is kind of near and dear to both of us. We are really passionate about expanding our services to our male population. And we know that when we started this, almost all of our clients were females. And eventually we had some male patients come in, but they were usually friends or families of our female clients. And so over the years, we've really tried to delve into and look at what bothers men the most and how do we get them into our practice.
And I think the other thing is making them feel welcome in a predominantly female field or practice. You know, when we were previously in Chicago, and it was a little different culture there, and we had a predominantly male clientele there just because of the circle we were in. And then here, it's been a challenge getting guys in the door. And so it's certainly, if it's a challenge for us, I'm sure it's a challenge for other practices, but we also want our guys to feel welcome and know that, like, we all need treatment, right?
So I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions about guys either wanting aesthetic treatments or where they can get those aesthetic treatments, and if the providers know how to tailor a treatment towards a male clientele. We did have a large male clientele in Chicago, but again, that was really because of our circle of friends and where our referral base was coming from. But when we moved here, I think what we see in our practice really is consistent with what a lot of medical spas see nationwide. So, we were recently at Aesthetic Next in Dallas, and I had the, privilege of doing a presentation on post-traumatic stress disorder and erectile dysfunction. And I thought, wow, this is a really difficult topic, and how am I going to make this relevant to med spas? And we do a lot of erectile dysfunction treatment in our practice. We try to not focus on the dysfunction part of this because so many guys are even, leery to use that word. It shuts them down. But interesting enough, when preparing for that, do you know on average how many females most med spas see for every single male patient? You heard this, so you should remember it.
I've probably heard it.
You did not pay attention to my presentation.
4?
7. So on average, we see 7 females for every male patient that gets through the door. Or that's med spas in general. Now, clearly, if you're changing your marketing or trying to somehow reach out to those male clientele, your numbers may look a little different, and in fact, ours look slightly different now. We've been able to really kind of increase our services for that population. But I found it interesting that, that's what a lot of places are struggling with. So the next thing that kind of led us down this pathway was, what are men concerned with as they age? And this was like, I don't know why it's shocking, but this number was really shocking to me. So their top 2 concerns. Do you know what they are?
Sexual performance and cancer.
Yes, he did listen to something. He probably had to hear me prepare for this for weeks, and so he should know these stats like off the top of his head. But yeah, it was there's several surveys out there, but one that I found interesting, there was a survey, and it was from Cleveland Clinic, but they looked at this male clientele or male patients over 20 and asked their top 2 concerns, and it was cancer, and really right there behind cancer was sexual performance. And that breaks down into a whole lot of different categories, from, people being concerned is that their testosterone to actually having some kind of other health problem that's contributing to this. But the, interesting thing was that hypertension, diabetes, obesity, all that stuff fell way down on the list. And so if you know that most men as they age are concerned with not getting cancer and being able to perform sexually, and we're looking at ways to increase service offerings in our practice, it should make sense that we need to be addressing sexual performance in some manner.
Right.
Why don't you talk about this and one of the procedures that we've actually trademarked and developed and what we offer for men in our practice?
We tend to see a lot of guys that want to focus on performance improvement. And so we've found that people were kind of put off by erectile dysfunction and didn't want to say that they had a dysfunction in general. So we trademarked the Performance P-Wave, and it's a combination therapy, and it uses sound wave device that sends sound waves into the penis to cause vasodilation, and in combination with a PRP therapy as well. And we put the patient on a at-home pump regimen. We use some supplements, some exercises, changes in lifestyles, and things like that. And we've had some really good results from this. And you know, it's like I said, it's a minimally invasive. I think the first visit's a little bit uncomfortable for guys, because females go to have routine OB appointments, and as males, we don't typically do that. And so we don't have those uncomfortable visits. So after getting that first visit out of the way and they develop a form of trust with us, then they're a lot more comfortable, and especially when they realize that there's help that they can get.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, again, more observational and kind of interesting than anything. But when we first were offering these procedures, like initially many years ago, when we learned to do these procedures, we actually said we're not going to do them. We weren't even going to
And do
offer
anything below the neck.
Yeah, nothing below the neck. We're not for males, females, period. And then, you know, gradually we added the service, and we had high patient satisfaction. But still, our men patients were coming to us through their wife, their girlfriend, their significant other. They were saying they have some issue, and we know you guys do this. Will you help them? So we changed our marketing a little bit and worked a lot on the environment that we've created at Skin and Tonic. Why don't you tell people, because a lot of people know us now, but they don't know where we were a few years ago, and our practice location. And why don't you comment on that and how that's changed the way that we try to make male patients comfortable in our practice?
Well, before we were, you know, when we first started, we were in a salon suite type setting. It just wasn't, it wasn't real conducive to privacy, for one. It was predominantly female-driven businesses. It was nail technicians and eyelash extensions and hairdressers, and so it really did set up an environment that wasn't very comfortable for a guy. And so I think when we moved to a more intimate setting, there's a lot more privacy offered, and guys, they feel comfortable where we are now.
Well, I think I was also thinking, like, so we were in that, and then we kind of partnered with another business, and the Permanent Makeup Center. We're still in there with Trinket. But initially we were in a small building that literally, you know, the signage, the color, the decor, everything was tailored towards a female clientele. And we saw that some of our men patients, they were a little bit embarrassed to come in there. They thought, is someone going to think I'm here for permanent makeup? And they would want to come after hours, or can we go through a back door, something where people didn't see them. And so we were really focused on that as we were thinking about our patient experience as they come through our practice now at Skin and Tonic. So from the time they come in, we try to minimize the time, you know, that they're in the waiting room. We get them into a private treatment room. We know that, you know, all of our staff have been trained on handling sensitive conversations. We make sure that, you know, nothing is off limits or taboo. So if they want to talk to us about something, and it's especially around their sexual health, we want them to know that we're going to keep their confidence, that that's not going to be shared with anybody else, that we're going to provide them with a private environment to discuss that. And we offer a lot of other treatments for our male client. So IV therapies, neurotoxins, fillers, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's not then so obvious that they're aware that when they come into practice, somebody think that they're only there for sexual health procedures. So we had to think about a lot of that when we were designing like the throughput of our practice.
And I also think that it helps these guys to know some of the statistics that, we certainly don't want it to be a numbers game or to generalize any of this, but whenever they realize that they're not by themselves, this is not a journey that they're the only person that this is being affected, that they're the only person being affected by this, and they realize, that in your 40s, about 40% of men have had some type of episode with erectile dysfunction, and 50s, 50%, and it continues to go as the age increases, but it's not always age.
Well, I think that was one of the things that, how we kind of stumbled upon this whole subgroup of PTSD and erectile dysfunction. And you and I have kind of had a vision of even establishing some way to help these guys through nonprofit organizations or some other way, because what we identified was there were younger patients that were coming in with issues that were not being addressed. And they were getting great results with some of the treatments, but we didn't fully understand why. I didn't understand why, because they would tell us, we would do one P-wave, and so that's the sound wave treatment device, and we use a device from Emergent MedTech. It's called a Zimmer Z-Wave, and so we use that device, and they would come back and they would say, well, we had a great result after one treatment, and we're like, from a mechanism standpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would that work so quickly? And one of the things that we kind of anecdotally looking back recognized was that a lot of these guys had PTSD as an underlying diagnosis. And we looked a bit further, it made sense, but we're in a large military community here in Pensacola. And when you look at the statistics, there's a lot of different studies from actually different military services around the world. But we know that a lot of our military members, if they have been deployed and they have been in some sort of traumatic situation, they can experience sexual performance issues at a rate 3 to 4 times more than that same age group in the civilian population. And so I think that's why we were seeing them. So it was just, that explains the younger people that are coming in.
It does. And I think my eyes were really open to it on one of our previous podcast episodes when we had Sherry Herndon on here as a sex therapist, and you can go back and watch that, but she kind of dove into a little about the impacts of PTSD on sexual performance, and we talk about men, but it's males and females.
Yeah.
Males have to perform, where females can kind of camouflage some of it. But, it's that break in trust that's often altered during an episode of PTSD or some of these traumatic events. And if you can help to repair some of that trust and confidence in these guys, then it's truly life-changing.
Yeah, and Sherry certainly is an expert in this area, and one of our, great friends, and also one of our favorite guests that we've had so far on the podcast. Definitely it was eye-opening for me to hear her insights on how she manages these patients with counseling. One of the things though, so we do offer this procedure, and clearly we've kind of specialized in this, and we do enough of it that we went to the trouble of even trademarking our own procedure for the Performance P-Wave for sexual performance issues in males. But we offer a number of other procedures as well. So Botox, we use that, or Dysport, Xeomin. We do use all that in the penis, right? And so we use that for erectile dysfunction, for penile lengthening. But we also have a number of other male treatments. So one of the things that I would like our potential male clients or people that are seeing us now to understand is it's not just about sexual performance. We do have a big practice on that, and that's where a large part of our male patients come. But we also do a lot of aesthetic treatments for males.
Yeah, 50 is the new 30. People are living longer, looking better, and guys want to look good as well as the females. And we've seen it for years where a guy will come in with his wife and, he'll say he doesn't really have a skincare routine, but then she'll say that he uses her night cream, or he can tell you more about the night creams than she can oftentimes. And so it is truly a concern for male patients, but it's often kind of taboo for a guy to even consider going into this realm. But the fun thing is, once they start, they also don't mind talking about it.
Yeah. Now, is your approach to the male patient different than that to your female patient?
I don't know that my approach is necessarily different, but my treatment is different. My consults all start basically the same with male and female, but they're certainly treated differently. And I think it's really important to know patient goals. I'll use this as an example and we'll kind of move on, but we were in a training in Orlando and we had one of our students that she was in the process of transitioning and didn't want treatment because was fearful that it would feminize her face. And so you truly have to.
So when you talk about transitioning, you mean from female to male?
You probably used the wrong pronouns because he was transitioning female to male,
Okay.
and was on hormone replacement and was fearful that it was a neuromodulator class and was fearful that getting this Botox or Dysport, whatever we're using at the time, was going to feminize his face. And so I think that that's very important to know your patient's goals starting out. And so a lot of these guys, they're not going to come out wanting, most of them wanting big lips or something to really feminize their face. But what they do want is just to look well rested, especially like all these Zoom meetings during COVID has really, made people hyper-focused on their face because it's right there on the screen. So my approach to them is the same as with females. My treatment's much different.
Yeah, I think that that's important for people to realize that and I agree with you, my approach, my consultation looks very similar because the way that we talk to patients, evaluate patients, we actually teach classes on how to do a proper consult and how you listen to them and their concerns. But I think it's important for the male patients to know out there that their providers have training specifically on male features. So we know, for instance, that males typically have wider jaw lines, right? And so when we look at the distance between their cheeks and the corners of their jaw, it's a little more boxy. That's almost lined up with males, whereas females, it's more like this upside down V. So there are ways with our treatment plan that if you're not going to someone who treats a lot of male patients, that they can make you more feminine. That if we bring that cheek out a little too far and don't do, or reduce the jawline in some way, it can make you look more feminine, and vice versa. We can
or extremely arched brows like I have right now.
His aren't, and he's self-treated, which we don't recommend, and I'm definitely frown upon. But instead of waiting for me to be home, he did his own Botox, and he's got a little bit of a brow
I'll let
arch.
Chris or Allie will fix me this week.
Yeah, we'll fix him this week. But I think that's important to know how we place the injection sites. The number of units are a little bit different to get the longevity, but there are just certain male features. The jawline's a little bit wider, the chin is a little bit more square, not as pointy. The lips are a little bit wider, but not as full in the middle. And so, you really got to talk to your patient about augmenting or enhancing their natural features, making sure that we're, respecting the look that they want to achieve, and that we know and that we have the training to put the products in the right places to get that look.
Some of the treatments that I think that are the same for male and female patients, and they're often overlooked, especially with our new patients that are coming into the clinic that just aren't really aware of what all is available, or the collagen stimulating treatments. And I think it's important for everyone, male, female, regardless of race. I personally try to do some type of collagen stimulating treatment once a quarter. It just kind of keeps me on track. So whether one of the energy-based devices, a chemical pill, microneedling, all of those things are, things that we can do for collagen stimulation, and I think is really important. And it kind of keeps people from just chasing lines and gives you just a overall better skin quality.
Yeah, and talk about all these things, really, I think many of them are embarrassed to either ask about them or talk about them because it's almost like a challenge to their masculinity. Like they're having to somehow say something, I don't like something about myself, something's not quite right, and I want to change it or augment it or enhance it. But what we know is that many people have these similar concerns, whether they express them or not. And once they find a provider they're comfortable with and that they can trust and they come up with a plan, then they're all about getting the procedures. So one of the things that I find that guys make jokes about really often, but they actually kind of like, is some of the permanent makeup options. And so when we look at things like, guy liner, it's eyeliner for guys. but it's not to make them look like they have eye makeup on. It's really to kind of help their eyes pop. So it's such a thin line right in the lash line that you don't really even tell it's there, but it's a permanent tattoo right at the lash line, and it just helps their eyes pop a little bit. And most people would never know that guys had that, but they're embarrassed to ask for eyeliner tattoo. So, even the terminology, how you refer to it, if it's something like guy liner, they're going to be more apt to discuss these things with you rather than coming in and asking for an eyeliner tattoo.
Yeah, it's like our performance treatments. I think the presentation for the patient, and to make the patient feel the most comfortable, and to know that there are things out there specifically for our male clientele. And I like to talk about this kid. He was probably one of my favorite patients I've treated since I started. And his mom was a patient of ours. He was 15 years old, was battling just horrible acne and tons of allergies, and was just having a heck of a time at school because of it. And so she brought him in, and we started doing some chemical peels, and then we started doing some Aerolase treatment for acne. And he got pretty clear, and then he got to the point that this 16-year-old kid at this point would text me and say, "Hey, Mr. Jerry, will you please call Mama and tell her it's time for me to come in for a treatment?" So that's one of those things. Like, I love that he started his journey at that age, and so now he was as comfortable coming into the clinic. And so if you can take a kid that age, and that's an awkward age for anybody, and put him in this setting, and he realizes it's something that's going to help him long term, then I don't think there's any reason us older guys can't.
Right. And even when we look at that, right, I mean, that's not anything injectable or anything. That's helping someone with, acne, and help prevent scarring, and some sort of treatments to get them on a good skincare regimen so they don't have to deal with these other things later on when they get to our age. I want to talk just a little bit about how we came up with the name Performance P-Wave. So you mentioned about us having that procedure and the naming being important. It's kind of a interesting story because neither one of us really planned this. We had talked about procedures in the past that we kind of thought were a good idea to trademark the name. Jerry comes up with really crazy names, like such crazy names that I'm like, we probably can't even say them on the podcast. But
every now and then I'll slide one by.
Yeah, every now and then he'll get one by, and my heart's like racing when he says it.
Vagicadabra.
Yeah, that one.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that one I went with. But over the years, Jerry has had all sorts of naming ideas that didn't stick. So when we did Performance P-Wave, it was really kind of unintentional. Nothing that was planned. We have worked with Emergent MedTech and used the Zimmer Z-Wave that we talked about earlier for a while for these treatments, but we would abbreviate it on the schedule as P-Wave just so we knew, like penis wave. And so we'd put the P in there so we would know how long it needed to be reserved, the machine, for treatment purposes. And one day, one of the reps asked, "Have you trademarked that name?" And we hadn't, but of course we said we had, and I thought, I better call the trademark attorney right away. So I call him, and he's like, "Well, that is too close to the device name, and there's other things out there, but if you put some other word with it." And that's when we added Performance P-Wave. And that it was really interesting because people find it way easier. So we didn't plan this, but now we look back, and it's so much easier for guys that are having some sort of issue to talk to us about, "I want to talk to you about the Performance P-Wave. I want to talk to you about that performance procedure that you offer." From that point forward, the process is the same. We still do the same medical evaluation. We still look at their medical conditions. We still look at optimizing things that we can reverse. We do a sexual dysfunction survey score so we get a baseline and we can determine the appropriate treatment. And then we decide, do they need this P-Wave device alone? Are we going to combine that with PRP therapies, do both of those? Are we going to add some neurotoxin? All that medical assessment from that point forward is the same, but it's that name that has made it comfortable for guys to actually come in and talk to us.
Yeah. So if you're out there and have any concerns, whether cosmetic concerns, aesthetic concerns, acne concerns, skin concerns, general aging concerns, performance concerns certainly, then there's always tons of options that we have available at Skin and Tonic, and our guys are welcome. We have, wives constantly referring their husbands, but we'd like for the guys to feel comfortable to come in on their own.
Yeah, I guess that means he's tired of this episode and he's ready to close us out. So we'll wrap it up there. Go check out performancepwave.com if you want more information on the Performance P-Wave. Until next week, where we'll see you again on another episode of Beauty and the Brain, we hope you guys have a productive, fun